My thoughts regarding RWBY is that I think it's a really good story. If I would compare Volume 8 of RWBY to any other show, I would legitimately consider comparing it to Attack on Titan Season 4, Part 1, maybe Part 2. I mean, they're basically the same. I will, yeah, if I compare RWBY as a whole to other series, I'll definitely compare it to Avatar, The Last Airbender, you know, the cartoon, and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So you can clearly see that I'm a huge RWBY fan, and consider it to be really high, have a high regards to the series. And this video, RWBY is disappointing, and here's why. This one got 4 million views. That's insane. Like, holy shit. Even if I tried, I wouldn't get this much view on, anything. And, in terms of, editing and the way the video is structured, yeah. This video is good, from a production value standpoint. But the arguments made in this video are really bad, on certain, the mid portion where he makes certain arguments are really bad, and someone has to have a counter arguments to it. So I am making this video. I hope you all enjoy this one.
It was produced by a darling of independent web content and created by a legendary animation genius and some of his most trusted.
Okay, there really isn't much problem with the first half of the video. I mean, in fact, the reason this video is so popular isn't really because of the latter half. The first half of this video is just a generally good documentary regarding RWBY's creation.
And
yeah, there's nothing really here to complain. Even if you're a fan or a hater, you are going to enjoy this video, this portion of the video, which I guess is the more emotionally manipulative parts of the video, but it's a generally enjoyable portion. I definitely felt like I looked at the title and was kind of put off by it. Oh, it's just one of those RWBY hating videos. But I was kind of curious as to why this video is so popular, and the reason of it for its popularity is entirely because of the first half. It's not because of the other half. I mean, it might be. I don't know, but yeah, the start of the video is really good. And I'm not trying to say this guy is a bad person or something. If anything, I am genuinely surprised and by this person's ingenuity and how he was able to make it so that his opinion is heard. But the strange thing about this video is the fact that he actually managed to complain about volume 1 to 2, but most people usually have a problem with volume 4 and onwards. People actually do consider volume 1 and 2 to be they're good, but people just hate volume 4 and 5. I think I mean, I definitely understand that. I definitely do think that if I were to rank all the RWBY volumes, volume 4 and 5 will be on the bottom side. If someone asks me what's the worst volume of RWBY, I will probably say volume 1 or volume 4. I wouldn't say it's a fact, because the Qrow fight against Tyrion makes things very muddy. That fight just solely on its own brings up volume 4 to its heights. But I also have to say that from a storytelling perspective, a lot of the arcs that were started in volume 4 gets paid off in volume 5. So as a result, it just makes volume 5 good, but volume 4 is also carrying volume 5's story. So maybe comparing volumes is not a good idea to begin with.
But RWBY, which
man, Monty's Twitter is freaking awesome. Look at his freaking hair. He looks like an anime protagonist. He looks like kind of kicking.
Trailer 4.
Man, dude, the dude had style.
Red vs. Blue season 10 last night.
Fuck yeah. We're fucking excited.
Perfect. I'll set the charges.
What about the team member?
Yeah, the voice acting wasn't very great. But you know, yeah, Adam's voice is weird in this trailer.
Oh, I think he might be a bad guy. This is the beginning of a writing problem which starts here and...
See, this is the dumbest shit argument I have ever seen.
Continues to plague the show until, actually, it hasn't stopped yet. When you have a character straight up say, I don't care about killing civilians.
Okay, no, the stupid arguments actually start from here. Maybe it was even here, I don't know.
To someone's face, what you're doing is having a character openly admit they've been written to be the bad guy. And that's incredible.
Oh no, this story has bad guys, guys. And the funny part about all this is the fact that he talks about Cowboy Bebop and just praises the shit out of it and says, oh, this show is so good. And in that Cowboy Bebop scene, there are thugs who are stealing shit from the store. So they are the obvious bad guys, whereas Adam is not an obvious bad guy. If anything, we are supposed to be like rooting for Blake in this scene. And Adam is working with Blake and helping him. So at the start of the show, the first impression people will have is, oh, Adam is this cool guy who's like a good guy and he is helping Blake. But turns out he's just fine with like killing all the civilians in this train or something.
Really weird because they've written monsters into the setting that are just generically evil and want to destroy humanity because that's in their nature. So it's very weird that the actual characters that you wrote behave like that too. Anyway.
Oh no! My story has villains! So scary, so bad. So such a bad writing. Ooh.
They get attacked by a robot and the guy cuts it apart in a genuinely really cool shot.
Like, Adam was always better than mindless Scream. Like, even Adam haters should understand that Adam and his ideology and his mentality and his hatred is so interesting to face off. Because he's not a mindless Scream. He's not just an enemy that you should just punch and be over with. There was a potential to save Adam from his own hatred, but unfortunately he was just too blinded by his hatred and his past and his agonized mind. So that's what's tragic about Adam. But this guy is trying to say, oh, you know, you don't need complex villains when you have super awesome Grimm. Who needs villains when you have Grimm?
But then he gets to the front of the car, and Blake says goodbye and cuts the car free, leaving him behind, obviously having a problem with his being okay with killing innocent people. And I guess this is the first time she's noticed this about it.
I mean, yeah.
And as
Blake doesn't just fight Adam or tries to change his mind. She just leaves because, you know, that's what she does. That's her flaw.
She disappears into the distance, and the colors really beautifully fade away, so she's alone in a void, and we're given a
it's really good
impression of her emotional state. The audience is struck with one lingering thought: he can make that jump. In the yellow trailer,
yeah, he can. That's a funny joke.
We're introduced to Jaune in a picture, and she's written like two adult men who've never written anything professionally before, except for Red vs. Blue trying to write a teenage girl. Weirdly.
Yeah, I mean, what are you trying to even say? That's Yang's personality. And what? Just because you haven't like met a girl like Yang before doesn't mean she's badly written. And this is also kind of annoying too, because artists don't usually just write one show. Like, this isn't the first ever fiction they have. Like, this isn't the first line Monty or Luna has written, because they have seen plenty of anime and they have lived for good 30 years. So saying that they didn't get pussy, so they don't know how to write. Therefore, they don't know how to write Yang is kind of an awful take.
Specific and back-to-back cool fights against a gang of guys.
Yeah, this trailer is probably one of my favorite. From like, like from all the trailers, this might be my favorite. I guess the one that really rivals this is RWBY Red trailer in Volume 4, RWBY's own trailer. But that might be a little bit of a controversial take. And yeah.
To all dressed like Jim Sterling.
Is that you?
Oh no, is that how she talked? The writing
Wow, what's wrong with that?
in voice acting could do with some
What? There isn't anything wrong with RWBY's voice. Hey.
and some of Jeff's musical decisions could be dialed back just a little bit. But basically, these trailers are some of the coolest possible trailers for a
Nah, the music is the best part of RWBY. The one thing that was consistently loved by everyone.
cartoon ever. Like, if you showed me every trailer for every
even the fights were like heavily criticized by fans. I mean, I still fucking love them. You know, stop comparing everything to Yang versus Mercury or Yang versus Neo or Pyrrha's fight against the Carton's group. Like, stop comparing the mid fights to the best fights. You'll just ruin your own enjoyment and happiness.
And asked me
something. People will make a comment, maybe it's like a criticism or something, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's a fair critique. But you don't want to listen to them because of the way they said it.
Which is something I think most people...
Yeah, I mean, it's a very common thing. Writers and artists do listen, regardless of that. So...
agree with.
It's a really tough win.
And I also do have to say that a lot of people do have hatred and envy, or I don't say, yeah, maybe envy, and they also just want to shit on you rather than something else. They think they're doing good things by shitting on other people's work, but what's really happening is they just trying to like assert their own dominance and then trying to push this narrative that their idea and how the show should be is better than what these people are doing. Which is, you know, is a lot of people's mentality. So as a writer, you should, I guess, listen to some feedback, but ultimately, you just listen and forget. It shouldn't be a big factor what other people say. You should decide from your heart what you should create and what you should do, I believe. Yeah, just because you have a point doesn't like give you a free pass to be an asshole. If anything, you are just using certain arguments just to be an asshole. You want to be an asshole. That's your desire. You know, that's your true intention. But you are just using show criticism as an excuse to be an asshole. So in that case, you know, I'm not saying in that case like that doesn't invalidate your argument. But whether your argument sticks or not, whether I listen to your argument or not, is up to me, not you. So people also need to realize that even if you do criticize the show, that doesn't magically make Luna and the other Luna, the animators, and Casey Williams or any Jeff Williams, magical person who can just do everything awesomely. They are completely restricted to the laws of nature and their own capabilities. If you don't, like, no matter how many times you say a certain fight is dog shit, if the animators aren't being paid enough or they don't have the physical capabilities or the time to flesh out certain aspects, then the show is gonna look kind of bad.
Hey, see? The chapel wasn't just here to be a reference to that scene from Kingsman, it was also a clever metaphor for my intent to make a good faith criticism.
Oh my god, that's
Hey,
so
come on,
bad. Really? You made an entire chapel just to make that joke? That's just a waste of time, man.
Wait, is an intro playing now?
The production values of this video is insane. That's the reason it's watched so much. I mean, from all the criticism videos, this one definitely deserves the views it gets. Unfortunately, I definitely wish that a more fan gushing or positive video had this much production value. I mean, I guess probably some of the fan animation fights people made definitely deserves that many views. But unfortunately, those views aren't there. this video is probably more popular than all the fan fights people did, which I'm really sad about. You watch the fan fights, are crazy. This video is super positive about Monty, but completely like shits on everyone else who has worked on RWBY, which is kind of counterproductive because Monty was the director of RWBY Volume 1 and 2. So whatever other people did, it was approved by Monty. So Monty probably had a good opinion of Miles, Luna, and everyone else who was working.
To start this video by doing the thing all the smart video essayists are doing nowadays, where they sum up the plot of the thing they're analyzing in a funny way that lays the groundwork.
Oh, I hate these. Why do people keep doing that? And you people keep saying I'm the one who doesn't respect time by stuttering. I'm sorry, okay? This is a live recording. I do stutter, but I don't do scripted videos and then we waste your time with scripts that don't do shit. I hate the summaries. Just get to the point.
But trying to delve into and describe the deeper story problems.
Fuck summaries.
Is the surface problem that there basically isn't one. There's a really telling scene at the end of the second season where the main characters sit around discussing the events of the show so far and conclude that they don't really know what's happening or why and haven't figured anything out.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yet.
Yeah, the bad arguments are starting here. So, Volume 1 and 2 has a story, but it's and it has arcs. The first arc is they are accepted to Beacon Academy. They met a bunch of people and they do a test there. They're fighting a Grimm. And the second arc is probably has to do with something people's studies and Weiss being jealous and RWBY being insecure about being the leader. And the third arc is about Jaune being bullied, which is, you know, a good arc, I would say. And the last arc is Blake finding out about Roman torturing.
We still don't even know why they did this or who that mystery girl was.
He's like completely changing the context of what RWBY said. He literally showed the video and RWBY saying there's just a lot of mysteries. That doesn't mean nothing happened or they still get to know each other. And this is like the first season of RWBY, and you only watched about 1 hour and 20 minutes of footage. RWBY Volume 1 is about 18 minutes long. That's just one movie amount of hour. So it's really not much of an investment. If anything, this freaking video, this dumb video is longer than RWBY Volume 1. So, you know, mister, this video doesn't really do much.
The show attempts to justify this, though.
Not every story has a neat and tidy ending.
Stories don't...
Oh my god. See this the dumb takes starting here. He's trying to like twist what Weiss is saying to fit his argument. Weiss is just saying that, you know, you don't get to know the answer to all the mysteries, and no matter how much you try, you don't just solve all the problems in the world. There are so many shit that you can't do. There are so many villains out there. There are so many people doing bad shit. Stop trying to bend the shit out of what Team RWBY said. Because they didn't say they didn't know what the story was. They just said there was so much mystery that was going on. And compared to a lot of other shonen shows with schools in it, a lot of shit just happens. Like, compared to all those shows, because despite these four being students, they managed to do a really hard, life-threatening exam. I mean, yeah, it's just an exam, but still. But in the second season, they practically went rogue and was trying to figure out what Roman torture and the White Fang was trying to do, thanks to Blake's own intervention. And and even disregarding that, there was a lot of emotional moments and a lot of psychological, social exploration of the characters. And this is the important factor that people have to understand. RWBY is not just an action story. It's not just about politics. There's a lot of... It's a combination of many, many, many different genres. And that's what's very impressive about RWBY. Sometimes it just feels like a slice of life comedy. Sometimes it feels like a horror movie. So certain scenes and certain arcs, certain episodes. And sometimes it's just the show's just one of those depression movies. And sometimes it's very psychological. Sometimes it's very political. And yeah, but mostly it has action most of the time. But, you know, I really like the variety. There's not a lot of whole show that tries to juggle all aspects of life like RWBY does. And that's also kind of a dingus thing too. Like, how much, like, oh, unfortunately we don't know the dislike because YouTube is a fucking idiot. And they removed the dislike, so I don't know what's the like to dislike ratio. But this guy probably is saying that Volume 4 is better than Volume 2. Because if you know, Volume 4 does, because like, after the school is destroyed, the story definitely becomes a lot more free-roaming, and there's a lot of political stuff that happens afterwards. So this guy is probably saying that, hey, Volume 4 and onwards probably has a better story than Volume 1 and 2, which it's an opinion that I might agree. I would say it's still very debatable.
Well, theoretically interesting, where like if you read it on Wikipedia, it would sound really cool. And in the show, there are plenty of times where the characters sit you down and tell you what the story was, and you go, oh, that's actually really...
What? This guy actually liked the talking parts of Volume 4 and 5. I don't know, even if this video is super popular, this person's opinion does not represent the opinions of the fandom, because the fandom is always fight, 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 fight. Talking is boring. Fight, 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 fight. That's the RWBY fandom, if you ask me.
Interesting. I wish I'd seen some of that. But
and this guy really likes the talking aspects of RWBY Volume 4 and 5, which, you know, I also really like. I mean, I just generally like RWBY as a whole, so cool, that's cool.
The actual episodes of the show you get to see.
I mean, someone is at least praising the actual fact that Volume 4 and 5 has actually started an interesting story and set up an interesting story rather than just people going to school. If you think that Monty has a big control in the story of Volume 1 and 2, then you have to realize that this guy is criticizing Monty. Because, you know, Monty didn't have a control over the story of Volume 4 and 5.
It's directed by Monty, and then...
And again, he is the director. He foresaw Volume 1 and 2 and said, oh, the story is very simplistic, but I like it. So, you know, maybe Monty has a different opinion than you, buddy. Why are you decorating Monty so much if Monty has such a different opinion than you? So, trying to like shit on Volume 1 and 2 is at least trying to shit on Monty's vision, because Monty did oversaw everything. So why are you like trying to, in this video, trying to make Monty be the victim, and this Miles and Luna being this masterminds who used Monty as his little worker, and being this massive masterminds of making RWBY bad, when Monty is the director and he's directly responsible for everything that's on the final screen. Did you look at this freaking line, dude, buddy? Written by Monty. Oh no! Volume 1 and 2 have such bad stories. It's all Miles and Luna's faults.
For example, there's a third species separate from humans or Grimm called the faunus, whose existence and treatment by humans is supposedly one of the driving elements of the entire plot. The first time this plot element, or even what a faunus is, comes up is about 11 episodes into the show.
It must be hard to be a faunus.
Your first reaction to a core plot point is, to be a what? What's that? The faunus are meant...
again, why is that a bad thing? Like, this guy is saying that, oh, you know, this portion of the is badly made, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't say a whole shit. Yeah, but you know what? I actually kind of think that this portion is almost perfect. I mean, there are many different ways to do it. I don't think it was necessary to explain all that. In fact, my own writing process always goes, like, I'm a really big fan of mystery writing, so I always just puts the viewers into a character that they can relate and just put them into the story, and the viewers discover their what's going on themselves without someone info dumping out of the story. And if they did what this guy wanted and just explain what the kingdoms do, what a furnace is, it's gonna take a whole lot of time. A lot of time.
They evaporate, and we transition to the first real scene of the story. The intro doesn't share information which might have been really...
And again, this intro is enough, because if you drag this out down too long, it's gonna become a historical documentary and bore the viewers.
Good to know.
This shouldn't have dragged.
In, so people...
It just explains what dust is, what humans do, and the existence of screams, which is, you know, good. Like, you're slowly being eased into what the hell is going on. And also, you know, episode 11 is fine. It's probably volume 1, episode 11. And the furnace arc doesn't like have to be the main story. It's definitely the most interesting arcs of RWBY, I definitely think.
But before they can actually tell you what that is, it cuts out. And
they're doing a natural job. If someone just comes here and just info dumps to the viewers about what the furnace is and what's happening to them and the history surrounding them, that's bad writing, because all the characters in the story know what the furnace is, and they do talk about and show how the furnace is being treated over the course of the story, and that's good writing. Show, don't tell. And this guy literally wants you to tell what the hell is happening to the furnace. It's not that important to the point it should be on the first scene of the first episode.
This universe's version of magic even works isn't mentioned in the slightest.
Yes! Show, don't tell. Don't mention or explain what certain things do. Show it. Fucking the RWBY story is just too big-brained in its exposition. They actually show, they don't tell you what exactly they do. And when they do tell you, this video freaking criticizes the shit out of it.
Name semblance isn't even said in the show until episode 4.
And you criticize this scene.
Our kingdoms are at the brink of war.
Wait, what? Are they? What's happening?
I mean, yeah, they are. The fans.
These all would have...
I mean, yeah, I guess they could have like shown what the hell was happening on Mistral and Beacon and the political implications. But you know, why did they have to show it? Because the story is about RWBY's team and his characters.
Been really useful to know going into the story, or at least...
You don't have to know shit that isn't relevant. In fact, the fact that the forest protest exists kind of implies that humanity hasn't resolved all conflicts, inner conflicts.
The instant they become relevant. But instead, basic aspects of the setting start to feel almost like twists when they suddenly come up multiple hours in, with no groundwork laid for you whatsoever. And
this isn't groundwork. Okay.
They suddenly come up multiple hours in.
The fact that these people, that Jaune gets bullied, isn't a proof that the people in this world have hatred inside of them, that they are racist and they bully one another. Is that not enough
opportunity to
foreshadowing for you?
Up and get the audience on the same narrative.
I think the coolest part about that intro is the fact that CRWBY is narrating the intro. So if you look back and rewatch the intro, CRWBY actually, the narrator CRWBY actually says this and explains this, and this says very sinister lines that humanity is going to be destroyed. They should be prepared. And then Osmond starts narrating and says, "Oh, but our soldiers are the humanity is still working together against the Grimms for a brighter future. So you have this very cool scene where only if you go back after watching the series do you truly understand that Salem and Osmond are narrating, and Salem is taking the side of the Grimm and humanity's destruction, while Osmond is saying that humanity is going to thrive against the Grimm.
If you just opened on this robbery without the intro, people would get the gist of robbery and girl stopping them, but not what dust is, or what it does, or why it's so important. But you kinda have to start with the dust store because it's a unique place for the setting, which could be interesting.
Yeah, like this guy is like trying to have his cake and eat it too. If the intro just goes long, it's just going to say, oh, the intro is too long. This is almost like a documentary. This is very boring. But when this shit happens, he's saying, "Oh, the artist is too stupid to understand what's going on. They haven't learned what dust is."
Written or rewritten to primarily focus on explaining dust, which is a tremendously poor idea because now nothing else is explained. When it comes down to it, there's
that's fine because this guy is like a perfectionist. He's going to like criticize the shit out of everything in every way the story is written. Why do you need to explain this stuff? RWBY is literally showing this guy, Roman Torchwick, stealing dust, and the viewers don't have to know what dust is or what it is truly capable of. They are going to see it throughout the story, and it also leaves a bit of an intrigue.
Clockwork Orange Man is trying to steal dust. Why? Well, you'll find out in season never, because they dropped that plot.
Does RWBY have to take you like an idiot? Take you, assume you as an idiot, and just don't know why are they stealing all the dust? Dust is powerful. They want power. Easy.
She might have had a pretty busy schedule, so I have the sinking feeling that they wrote the intro and then recorded it and then realized that maybe it could have done with some more work and it was too late. That's just my speculation there.
Oh yeah, of course. Let's speculate it. The writers weren't fully satisfied with the opening.
But this stuff needs to be the strongest because it's the best chance you have to sell an audience on your setting and story. The only thing really holding up its end here is Monty's fight.
If anything, I think they should have just cut the intro. As much as I think it's cool, seeing this fight,
the robbers.
I'm sorry.
Which is
seeing this fight go off is as fast as possible. Is probably should be their priority. But I also like that Salem's and Osmond's narration is really cool.
The setting of, say...
Like, the fact that this guy is talking about show, don't tell is so baffling. And he literally just criticized the entire opening and shat on it for showing and telling. Torchwick specifically throws a dust towards RWBY and then shoots towards that dust to create an explosion to show what dust does. It's kind of like a grenade. It's kind of like an ammunition. And they did that by showing, not telling, but let's just show Avatar The Last Airbender win people's heart with this emotional manipulation and make it seem like RWBY is ass in comparison, despite the fact that both Avatar and RWBY does the same thing. This guy is just trying to cement the fact that he's not a hater who doesn't like anything. This is the emotional manipulation aspect of this video. He's trying to remind you Avatar, a well-acclaimed show, and then praising, and then trying to compare this to RWBY and saying, oh, RWBY doesn't do this, so it's shit. Even for RWBY, exactly did that.
But if you're a talentless hack, there are other ways of writing exposition. In, say, Harry Potter, Harry is a person from our world learning about a much more magical one hidden behind his own. So the viewer is told how some things work by way of Harry learning, because Harry doesn't know and needs...
Like, why do we have to throw something else under the bus to make a point? This is a trope that works for a good reason. Just because it's cliche doesn't mean it's bad. Harry legitimately doesn't know how the world works, so he is excused to be
told.
Excused to be told.
So we get scenes where,
if anything, it's just a matter of preference. Where, if you want the audience to be explained more properly, you should have a main protagonist that don't know much about things. But if you want the story to feel more natural, you should write a story like RWBY, where they don't explain to you what does this. They only explain it in the intro, and something like the intro very rarely happens.
Harry Potter isn't as good as when you read it as a child. The hottest take of 2014.
Yeah! And RWBY is... Yeah, I kind of agree. And I think that also kind of summarizes his criticism of RWBY 2, because RWBY Volume 1, 2 does take place in the school. Volume 3 takes place in the school, but it's about the school being destroyed, so it's cool.
Another character takes him aside to tell him how things work.
Do you know what aura is?
Yeah, and it's one of the few scenes that does it. Unlike Harry Potter, which is pretty much the entirety of the first book, but it's fine. Why do you have to be so, have certain beliefs and ideas against certain techniques? Because if Jaune doesn't know, he is going to be able to explain. And certain things like the exact specifics and the logistics of how dust, semblance, and aura works can and should be explained by words.
Example, in an
so
early
this is a very
in this
necessary
character,
scene.
Pyrrha.
It's like a force field!
Okay, Miles, Kerry, you just made your whole audience sit through that exposition. You can't then make a joke about how simple the explanation could have been.
No! This is actually a very good scene, because it's both a comedy and it also manages to explain things in a simpler way. You get both explanation from Jaune and Pyrrha. Pyrrha gives the more detailed explanation. It protects or something. And then Jaune gives the very simple explanation. So you have two explanations. One very detailed and one very simplistic. That's good.
So,
that's really good. And it's also very funny.
Father and his father before him were all warriors. They were all heroes. I wanted to be one too.
There's no way he didn't at some point.
Yeah, I think this point kind of still stands. Why doesn't Jaune know anything about this?
Pick up this concept.
But like, so what? This isn't a plot hole. This just means it's a bit convenient, and it also just isn't explained. Like, there might be many possibilities. Maybe his father and grandfather, all people who knew about what aura is, died, and whoever raised him was just a normal human being. So they probably didn't know anything. They just said to Jaune that, hey, your parents were really good warriors, but nobody was there to teach him. Yeah, we didn't get Jaune's backstory. And again, this isn't an actual complaint, because there are like hundreds of characters in RWBY, so why should we get backstories when the ongoing story is so much interesting?
This is Pyrrha.
Hello again.
Pyrrha graduated top of her class at Sanctum.
Never heard of it.
Oh yeah, let's freaking nitpick and pick up all the scenes that the characters explain stuff. Even you were complaining about how the characters don't get any explanation in this part, but in this part, you are criticizing them for explaining stuff, which is baffling.
Do you know who Pyrrha?
So when you do explain stuff, he's going to criticize all that explaining part in this portion, saying it's not show and tell. But when you do show things and don't tell, he's going to going to keep criticizing here and saying, "Oh, the explanation isn't enough. Explain more, please." You know, the blatant hypocrisy.
Suffers from him being written to be literally born yesterday. It's that everyone else's characterization suffers too, when they essentially have to pause being their own characters in order to explain the story to someone. Pyrrha, in my...
Again, this is the problem with a lot of these writing critics. They don't write stuff themselves. They just criticize whenever a certain trope happens. Like this trope exists in real life. In real life, when someone doesn't understand something, you have to explain it to them. And it's actually doesn't ruin anything, because it's all in character. When characters explain stuff to other characters, they always do it in character, and RWBY does emphasize that. Like when Pyrrha explains a lot of stuff, she goes into very much detail, and she isn't annoyed by anything, and she's super nice. But when Weiss explains to RWBY, such as how dust works, she explains it to her when she didn't ask. RWBY didn't ask for an explanation, but Weiss explains regardless, and she's super bossy and annoying about it. That's completely in character. That's how people communicate. They talk, talking isn't bad.
My opinion is one of the most interesting characters in the show, but so much of the time she could have spent being interesting or doing something interesting is spent obsessed with teaching Jaune everything he needs to know.
Oh no, this girl has a crush on this boy and is totally digging it. I don't like that. I don't like it when characters have emotions and communications with other people. I will just prefer if they just beat the shit out of Grim for 24 hours. Yes. Pyrrha is a bad character because she's simple. She actually has love and emotional attachment and digs other men, so she's a badly written character. Ooh, sex makes females bad character.
A huge portion of the early show's screen time is dedicated not to the main characters of RWBY, who the show is named for, but to Jaune, the real main character, getting trained and explained to and flirted with by Pyrrha, the cool—
Oh no, the show actually has more than one character, and the world is so much rich to the point that everything doesn't revolve around the main character. Oh no, what a tragedy. There are so many good written and interesting characters other than RWBY. These characters are too interesting that they make RWBY uninteresting in comparison. There's too many good characters and too many good characters to focus on. Oh no, too many good characters. Please kill them off.
Majority of the early show in a school, so often the viewer is in a literal classroom being lectured to.
The majority of my life was wasted on school, but I don't have a grudge against schools. Calm down. Schools exist for a reason.
No, it doesn't become fun when the characters in the scene are bored of it too. However, because—
No, it's relatable. I was bored at school sometimes, and the characters are too.
Was they're trying?
It's relatable, it's funny.
To make the exposition naturalistic, you're also expected to immediately grasp multiple abstract concepts that aren't explained at all. Take, for example, semblances.
Oh no, show don't tell! What the fuck? Even though you were complaining about he was complaining about RWBY explaining stuff to one another. The characters were explaining stuff to one another, and now he's complaining about show don't tell.
There were semblances, and one of them was magic. Good luck figuring out which is which without being explicitly told by the story.
I mean, there is an explanation. The explanation is that the main powers are limitless, whereas semblance and the dust are resourceful. You have to be very resourceful to them because they're limited, and semblances are restricted to how much aura you have, and dust is just like ammunition, it runs out. But main power is just OP. And there's the explanation, dude.
Every character in RWBY.
Why are you mad, bro? It's kind of like the difference between someone using a normal gun and someone using a gun that just has infinite ammo. They don't have to reload. They just infinitely shoot gun. If someone starts doing infinite gun shoots, then that's probably magic. But if someone has an ammunition, that's just a regular gun. That's the difference, sir.
Each hit, she gets stronger, and she uses that energy to fight back.
Then,
I mean, it's not a completely accurate explanation, but considering that they were in the middle of a fight, I honestly can blame RWBY for explaining that poorly, and it may be true because, from a scientific standpoint, because Yang is absorbing all the damage and the energy the opponent hit her with, so she is technically getting stronger, and it's just releasing all that energy in one big burst.
Semblance is like yours. He absorbs energy through his sword, stores it up, and then sends it back when he's ready.
There's practically no difference. The only difference that makes is that RWBY says that Yang gets stronger, which, you know, scientifically speaking, that's not very wrong. She is technically storing up energy, like Blake's saying, so she's technically getting stronger. The explanations aren't contradicting one another. If anything, I would say they're adding into one another.
To something even as simple as one of our 4 main characters' abilities makes the show very confusing to watch. When you're
oh no! It's confusing to watch because there's only like 2 explanations where they explain Yang's powers, and the rest of the time is just show don't tell. Oh no! RWBY just doesn't like explaining stuff, and for you complain about the show explaining too much. This is also a bullshit argument, because
so Blake can tell Yang his semblance? Is he just waiting?
Yes, Adam didn't attack. He was being really generous here, but the problem, the reason he didn't attack is because Yang is blocking all of his attack. So what was happening in the scene is that Adam was probably waiting for to see if Yang was gonna show any signs of weakness. Adam only had a few seconds of chance to attack. He couldn't attack here because Yang is directly looking at Adam. If Adam could have attacked, he could have attacked here.
Listen your script before you're done. Like, just...
So, okay, let's count.
But, like, show one other person your script before you're done. Like,
3.
Just show it to one person.
He only had 3 seconds to move. Do you seriously think it's a plot hole? Because Adam didn't take advantage of this 3 seconds?
14 episodes into the show, Pyrrha saves Jaune's life by manipulating his shield from afar with her Magnet Man powers, which we didn't know she had until this moment either, by the way. And all the other characters react to this as if it's a crazy, unique thing.
Did you watch Volume 2, buddy? You know that Pyrrha hides her semblance, and the reason that RWBY and Weiss and everyone else was so surprised is because she is hiding her semblance all the time. Like, RWBY probably explained what her semblance does off screen to everyone else. She's hiding her semblance, well, whereas everyone else has, you know, the combat footage of the training ground is probably publicly available to everyone. And Pyrrha didn't use her magnetic powers there. She doesn't use that power in trainings or anywhere. And this scene was before Volume 2. In Volume 1, Pyrrha explains this, and in Volume 2, Pyrrha uses this power to fight against RWBY and Team RWBY, so it's there is no hole in here.
But just to fuck with you, magic does also exist in addition to all this.
Yeah, I think that's funny. Like, not a problem with the show. I just think that it's kind of like how humans have guns and computers and technology, but if someone just freaking creates a LSD screen out of nowhere, they probably think that, oh, it's magic. It's very similar to that.
The idea is completely fine, but this is not how you convey it to an audience. This scene is supposed to be about Jaune's personal growth as a character, but instead, first-time viewers are going to be going, hang on, what's a semblance? I thought people could just do magic.
Again, what's wrong with that? You know, a lot of shit is happening. I mean, generally, a lot of shit happens in a complicated and interesting story. So what's wrong with people thinking and having stuff to analyze and think about?
Imagine if the first time anyone said
oh no! RWBY Volume 1's stories too complex info. I complained about nothing happening.
But the way they introduce it is they have a character getting confused by these weird powers he has, and then 2 other characters turn up to explain what a stand is to him, so he gets it, thus helping to ensure that you...
Oh! Did you guys just like see the blatant hypocrisy? Oh no! JoJo explains how stands work, just like how Pyrrha explained semblance and auras work to Jaune. Oh no! the blatant hypocrisy.
Stops caring about really understanding what's going on. They start to treat it like it's not really worth their time.
No. There is no point in explaining because RWBY does a really good job of show, don't tell. Like, so much better than JoJo. I mean, and this is the thing. This guy is freaking praising freaking JoJo when JoJo is like the exact opposite of show, don't tell. It's tell. JoJo just has insane exposition. And it does it in a very funny way, so it becomes a lot more endearing. But it's still, regardless, a very shonen explanation that they really didn't have to do. Whereas RWBY is not shonen-esque in its exposition. It's actually very mature, almost to the point of the characters, the viewers not knowing and being confused, because the show just doesn't like to explain. It just wants to show a lot of stuff. Like, I actually didn't know how Ren's semblance exactly worked until I read the wiki. I finished volume 6. I think I then went to the Discord of RWBY and asked what Ren's semblance does, and people explained it to me, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And that's not a bad thing. It just shows that there are so many characters in the show that know what a semblance is, what Ren's semblance does, that there isn't any point in explaining. Like, the characters just learned what Ren does off screen, so there legitimately isn't anyone worth explaining it to, and it's just a wasted screen time.
And tune it out while they wait for the next cool fight. Good exposition and proper...
Again, it's a good thing. But you know, unless you're not satisfying this hbomber guy, he isn't like... hbomber guy and do what everything in the way that this guy wants. This guy is going to like keep making videos complaining about it unless it's specifically what he wants. Thousands and thousands of people are saying and complaining about RWBY because I feel cornered. I feel like people are being very unfair to this show, and it's being and just like to complain and bitch about stuff that isn't worth complaining and bitching about. Life is great. I mean, RWBY is very realistic show. I mean, realistic in its own universe.
Actually, fantasy stories.
And logical.
If you do it in a boring way, or do it badly, or...
And these writers and like production people have spent a lot of thought and effort into this show, and it's not something that's just going to like, you're not going to easily poke holes in this
or don't do it
in this show that easily without making yourself look like an idiot.
One thing in the
and I want to like emphasize that with this video.
Of your whole series, and then it turns out not to be as big a plot point as you'd thought, the audience's experience of your potentially good story is damaged, and it's really hard to get that goodwill back when you've lost it. I'm only realizing now, writing this video, exactly how cool RWBY's story could have been if it was written in a way that wasn't such a struggle to get to grips with. The show is having such a problem conveying its world that you have to watch another different show to learn based...
Oh no!
Sick shit. Despite spending tons of time sitting you down...
It's like this, what I can't stand about this guy is the fact that his ego. Even if you like do a fantastic video with great editing and even 1 million and get 4 million views on your video, it still doesn't change the fact that you have an ego of a fucking mountain. Like, this guy is the prime example of the guy Miles was complaining about, where he literally just fucking complains, oh, my ideas are superior, and this show is trash, 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 and...
telling you how the world...
And his arguments just is extremely
works. They still don't manage to tell you enough about the setting for you to be able to understand it, so they made a second companion show consisting entirely of lectures called RWBY World of Remnant. Everyone's favorite show consisting entirely of lectures called...
World of Remnant is pretty cool too. Like, I genuinely think it's a fun series that if you're a big fan of RWBY that you should watch. people complaining about it are kind of ass, because like having much lore is really cool, and it being a separate series is good because it means that it's not mandatory to watch all this. Like if you want to know more about the RWBY lore, you can watch the YouTube. But if you don't want or don't care and just want fun action story, watch the main series. You don't have to delve into it. That's really cool. That's the advantages of modern society.
World of Remnant. Everyone's favorite part of watching a cartoon. The homework, like what all the countries are, and how they work, how huntsman academies work, and the basic history of the world, along with the major mechanics of the show, like what Grimm actually are, what Faunus are, how aura works, what a semblance is. Oh, and how could we forget the cross-continental transmits?
Yeah, this was actually pretty cool, because this wasn't really explained in the main show, but, you know, they did explain how there is a communication, but how the communication also isn't good, to the point that Ironwood has to like make a giant transmitter that will connect the world.
The creators seem to have realized that this isn't explained very well in the story that they wrote. So they essentially seem to have realized that this isn't explained very well in the story.
Oh yeah, let's complain about not having explanations, then complain about the explanations that we got. Fantastic.
That they wrote. So they essentially made a private personal Wikipedia to tell you what was happening.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think a lot more people should do that when writing a story.
The wielder's semblance is completely unique.
But then it turns out that Weiss's semblance isn't unique, and the Schnee family have the exact...
You know, exceptions. Kind of like there are exceptions in JoJo's too, where Star Platinum is exactly the same as the world. You know, exceptions exist, dude. Come on, stop complaining.
Like it's in their blood or something.
This video is so painful.
Sister Winter,
why can't we have nice things?
The same thing. She's one of the only other people who already knows this. This isn't how you write exposition.
I guess this is kind of a valid criticism. Like, yeah, I think they should have made a scene of Weiss explaining her semblance to RWBY or something instead of this. So yeah, I guess this is the one valid complaint.
This isn't how you...
And you know, that doesn't make the show bad. You know, oh no, like Winter did a oopsie. The writers did an oopsie in this one scene. The show is ruined. Fucking trash. Stop watching RWBY and stop your Rooster Teeth subscriptions.
The people who already knows this behalf, even if
like the main series is freaking amazing. I actually like binged RWBY volume 1 to 7 in like 4 to 5 days. That doesn't happen often. It just shows that the show is the characters are very likable and very diverse, as well as the fact that, well, the fights are also good, fantastic. The soundtrack was absolutely banger, and even if like the volume 1 and 2 look janky, which, you know, this guy could have like complained about volume 1 and 2 looking janky, but he doesn't for some reason, because, you know, people will tear him apart. You know, you can't criticize Monty or the limitations of that time. Because, you know, you don't want to make fun of the guy who's dead and beloved. Like, I'm not going to like shit on Monty because I love Monty. I love that guy. But I'm not going to like stand here and say volume 1 and 2 looks amazing, because it doesn't. And a lot of the off-putting thing about me recommending people to RWBY is that people look at the volume 1 and 2 and they go, it kind of looks like a PS2 video game. It doesn't look very good.
Do you like this?
Like, I probably should just skip to freaking Adam, or maybe, I don't know, skip to Yang versus Mercury or Yang versus Neo fight, because when I'm recommending RWBY to others, because that's probably a way to go, because Yang versus Neo and or Mercury is very plot related, but it's such a cool fight.
Show and think it's good, or at least...
Yeah, like I did watch binge RWBY because I watched the compilation of the fights online, so maybe that's a good way to make people interested.
Really works. That said, you fully learn what huntsmen and huntresses are by sitting in a classroom while they make a point about how this is boring and the other characters aren't paying attention.
Hey! It's a social criticism of how schools aren't helpful. So, you know, it's not entirely pointless. So, and like I said, the characters being bored out of their mind is sort of just a window to reality. And it's also social criticism as to how schools aren't helpful. No, seriously, like RWBY managed to become independent and got such a big character development in volume 4, 5, and 6. Like the biggest RWBY development came from volume 3, 4, 5, and 6, where she wasn't studying in the school. She was out there fighting for her life. School doesn't give you character development. Life-threatening situations give you character development. And that's true to reality too.
With Glinda implies to me is that someone on the writing team did know how to write exposition, and his name was Monty Ohm.
Oh no, yeah, let's assume that Miles doesn't know shit. Even for RWBY's exposition is still good, even for Monty's dead. I still fucking think that the certain expositions and lines are so snappy, even today. Like volume 7 and 8 has some great exposition and dialogue. Still, and Monty is dead, so probably that's not entirely Monty's ability, and that the people who are working on RWBY are actually talented, not just, Monty. Like, the show didn't just become utter dog shit after Monty died, Otherwise, volume 3 wouldn't be the most popular season, and volume 6, 7, and 8 is still beloved. Even for people, there are still people bitching about it. Like if someone asks me what's my favorite RWBY volumes, it's going to be 6, 7, 8, or 3. One of those 4. I recently think that's probably volume 7. And the funny thing about those volumes is that they happened after Monty died. Again, I love Monty. I still think his fights are amazing, but his fights are the ones that are amazing. I don't think he was that important in terms of the writing process. Like, there are still many other writers who still manage to make the story more interesting.
Did you steal my binder? I am not a crook.
What are you talking about?
He said a dog? In the mail?
But a few episodes in, we have this big fight where the team work together to beat a big mecha. And in this scene, Monty does all the characterization.
Oh, no, yeah. Let's just give credit of all the fun and goofy scene and friendship scenes to Monty. Luna doesn't write dialogue, guys. The snappy, cool dialogues are all written by Monty. Monty just freaking came back from the dead and wrote volume 6, 7, and 8. This guy has so much research. I'm not going to fucking lie. My research is lacking. But that doesn't, in fact, that kind of like makes me even more mad because I still know what everything this guy says. And this guy did a heck ton of research. And his conclusion that he came up with was Monty's cool and everyone else is dog shit.
Had come up with for the
How, like, just because you have a lot of info doesn't mean that you're smart or you're intelligent or you're wise. This guy collected so many data on the RWBY and still has one of the most dog shit logic and arguments.
Rose is a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, this is kind of the thing that the Americans and the general modern society tries to do, where teenagers and people under the age of 18 can't have a social and relationship. They just should be cool to one another, because if they show affection and compassion to one another, they might do the sexy things, and that's no good. We should act like cold robots to one another because sex is bad, guys.
But at least let's take care.
Love is bad. The friendship and the emotional relationship is bad because if you keep being nice to one another, you might do sex, and underage people shouldn't do sex or should be nice to one another because that will lead to sex. Oh no, the tragedies.
Careful note of how RWBY and Yang are the only pair that don't do a team attack here, because that would mean acknowledging the part of your fandom that came up with a ship name for two
I mean, it will be funny if they just acknowledge that. I mean, it will be fine because, you know, it's an in-serious thing. I just think it will be just hilarious. Yeah, the writers are probably afraid of that too, like acknowledging that bandmates. I just think it will be funny. It'll be hella based if they still manage to like give a name to RWBY and the Yang's attack. Because realistically, they should have an attack name in the story because the attack name didn't come from a ship in series.
Fucking disgusting.
Barring the kicks and flips and everything, it's just there's so much going on like in the performance.
It's like a silent dialogue scene.
Oh my god, I love this.
We're looking at their faces and seeing them examine things. It's a really strongly characterized scene just out of nowhere. Also, I got that reference. Good one, Shane. Compare and contrast with when the bad guys actually discuss Pyrrha's power and they're just sitting around going, oh, she can control magnets. It's called polarity, which I also know somehow. Like, it's so...
Like, what the fuck was it? Did the writers supposed to do? You're going all this like credit to the animators, you're shitting on like
and they're just
the writers info. It's possible that Monty came up with this dialogue. It's possible that Monty saw this scene and thought, that's really good. That's a really good exposition. Like, what the fuck was what the like? Mercury has to explain this to Emerald and Cinder by words. You can't like explain how Pyrrha semblance works to them by fighting against Emerald and Cinder. You can't explain everything with fights. There are limitations, obvious limitations.
Or shots to poke fun at. But talking about the...
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's really bad.
This video seems like a distraction, because the show looking perfect wouldn't fix its core writing and storytelling problems, and I've enjoyed much...
Yeah, I mean, this guy is complaining about the story. I think the story is like fine, if not really good, for a story that's taking place in school.
Much worse.
Because that's the thing about RWBY. Like, people started fucking hating it after they left the school, after they stopped being bubbly and funny and and became super depressed. People hate the depressed RWBY. I love both versions. I think the early parts are just fun time, and the later parts just hit hard emotionally. Like, both happiness and both comedy and sadness makes life rich, you know. I don't like take one over the other, because it's like trying to take the day over the night. It's like trying to say that light is better than the darkness. It's not. Both light and darkness creates life, you know?
Looking shows because they told a better story. The biggest problem with the show isn't the animation surrounding these fights, it's the story surrounding these fights.
Oh yeah, let's freaking complain about this part. Even for Qrow has some banger lines in this part. Yeah, let's not talk about the fact that like the first parts where Qrow shows up and like says a bunch of shit. Like, Qrow's lines are freaking iconic, dude. Like, the first few lines that like Qrow says are so iconic and so memeable. Like, Qrow's freaking lines are comparable to the lines Spike Spiegel says. It's so great. Like, I'm not one of your general operatives, Jimmy. You saw this? This is... If I was one of your men, and then like the Iron says like, if you were one of my men, I would have you shot. And Qrow says, if I were one of your men, I'd shoot myself. Like, bro, that's great. And you can't freaking say that Monty did it because Monty died. That Monty was dead at that time. So Luna was the one to write that line. The one who wrote the line is not a hack. He's a genius. And Luna probably wrote it. Luna or Carrier, whoever was on the writing team.
Whose best idea for conveying what a huntress is to have a professor tell our huntresses in training in a classroom, as if they—
Buddy, I know, school is shit, but you don't have to, like, bring in your school PTSD to this to this video and then complain about as if it makes RWBY objectively bad or something.
They've never been told before, even though they're going to a school for huntresses, and then to write a side cartoon telling you again. In another good example, when the characters are being tested in the woods.
Why did Monty decide that the story should take place on school? I mean, Monty was the director, he did come up with the concept art, and he did agree to this idea. You know, so the genius Monty decided that the story should take place in a school. And I think it's cool because you get to see a bunch of characters and introduced, and they don't like stay at school. The school just gets blown up to smithereens. So I think RWBY's creators are genius because they use the best aspects of school, which is, you know, a bunch of characters meeting with one another, being forced to work with one another, being forced to create a bond, and then just blowing up the school.
Run and live. That is an idea I can get behind.
But as soon as Monty fight mode begins, it's like they were—
You didn't understand the show don't tell aspect of RWBY, sir. Because if you did see the thing, there was like a huge wall that they couldn't get across, so they kind of were forced to fight. Because, you know, there's a mountain there, and they can't get over, so they have to, like, beat the crap out of this thing before climbing over the mountain.
It's like it's going to set up interesting character tensions, maybe a developing friendship with emotional speed bumps along the way. But it's resolved instantly when—
Oh no, instantly. Instantly, because Weiss is not a fucking idiot. He's not like Adam, who gets constantly told that he's wrong and you should abandon hatred, and Adam doesn't listen. Adam just gets talk no jutsu'd by Blake and other characters over and over again, but he doesn't listen and tries to kill everyone, and therefore got killed. Whereas Weiss learns from her simple mistake. She learns very easily. That's why this arc is easily resolved. This arc is short because Weiss is not a fucking dumbass.
Problem solved. Writing, like—
Yeah, it is writing. It's good writing. Because, you know, just because things take long doesn't mean it's good, and just because things are short doesn't mean it's bad. You know, if anything, if you kind of get the point across in the least amount of time, that's probably good writing.
All Weiss needed was for a man in a position of authority to give her a good telling off.
Jerks.
It wasn't the fact that he was the authority. It was the fact that, because he literally said, oh, the way you're acting, the way, like, you're acting towards your teammate, the way you're complaining, is that how a team leader is supposed to act? Like, and that just completely wakes up Weiss from her ego trip.
Just so you know, Weiss's main character arc is about her relationship with her abusive and controlling father. So the idea this is what she needed is actually kind of gross.
Oh yeah, let's completely ignore the context here. Because, you know, when teachers are teaching their students how they should behave, it's always going to be something like an abusive relationship. I seriously think you have a PTSD problem of schools, my dude.
Hashtag RWBY fans. Have you heard? Yang Xiaolong is gonna fight Tifa Lockhart. My money's on the hot one.
I mean, to be fair, Yang is 17, so that's like one age away from adolescents, like 18. And also teenagers are hot. Like, that doesn't change the fact that just because the law says it, the law has an obsession with the number 18 doesn't make it so that teenagers aren't hot.
All right, so we got.
Oh no, like Luna's being honest on Twitter about his horniness. You know, let's cancel him for his honesty, I guess.
Xiaolong, she
out. But then he stands up to him and saves him from a big grim, and now he respects him so he won't share his secret. That's the solution to bullying, kids. Save them from a monster and maybe they'll leave you alone.
I mean, that works too. I actually don't think, like, you shouldn't obviously take this literally, but it's a thing that works, but because Jaune, despite being bullied, he wasn't like going to like leave Cardinal alone and like, yeah, you're a bully that bullied me and made my life miserable, so I'm going to leave you to die. That's not how Jaune is. And even if Jaune like was feeling inferior, he still risked his life to save Cardin. So Cardin is unlike like Adam or anyone else. He's not a complete fucking doofus. So he does realize his own mistake and how much of a dick he was being, and how he was the inferior one.
Because she's into him.
Oh yeah, I love this scene. Like, look at this, and yeah, you have to like this like facial expression says a lot.
This
I really don't like complaining about plot convenience because life is all about conveniences. Like, yeah, they were fighting and suddenly like RWBY and Penny finding Blake is possible. It's always possible because they were searching for Blake in this arc.
Any idea who most of the characters involved even are, which affects my engagement somewhat. It's a really cool...
What? Oh no, it's wrong to enjoy fights that about people you didn't know.
Feels very disconnected from the rest. Probably not gonna
wind
up very good. And also, the way a huge swath of the show isn't about Team RWBY, and their plotline evaporates to make way for the adventures of some guy, the writers don't...
You know, I'm sorry that the world of RWBY, the world of Remnant is too big. There's so many interesting characters outside of Team RWBY. I'm sorry that Team CRWBY just wrote too many interesting characters and want to explore them. I'm sorry. We should just make only the 4 main characters relevant and everyone a dogshit character, so we can always just focus on those 4 and everyone else will be uninteresting. I'm sorry that our story just feels too good and too alive. There's too many good and interesting characters. I'm sorry.
Seem to be handling the story they did know they were supposed to do that well either. It certainly doesn't make it look any better that the guy is voiced by one of them. Oh, and then in Volume 2...
Oh yeah, let's assume and put our tinfoil hats.
They correct for this problem by...
And make this Miles the evil villain even for Volume 1 and 2 is being overseen by Monty. And they even have a different director probably on different... on the other volumes too. Like, there's a whole production. There's no way like Miles have any authority, and even if he did, it will be his story, so him controlling things will be fine because he's the fucking writer. And even then, I legitimately do think that self-insertion isn't that bad because you never really are going to like fully self-insert in any situation, because let's be honest, we don't know much about ourselves. But when creating a character, it's good to have good guys, or at least guys that you have a similar opinion to, because having only villains and bitches and selfish people beating the shit out of one another gives the wrong impression that you are one of those characters, whereas having a character that have a similar opinion or what you think is right, and that character representing the right mentality is good, I think. So yeah, self-insertion isn't really that bad.
A really cool, attractive guy who...
Because, you know, you are going to have a lot of different characters, so naturally one or two of them is going to have a similar personality or at the very least a mentality and beliefs and ideology is similar to you, so...
There's goggles, and they make a point of showing how Weiss is into him, like, right away. Let's not assume that this is, like, author insert, wish fulfillment, or whatever. Like, let's assume they just came up with this character and then carried...
Yeah, if it was a self-insertion, why did Miles Luna insert himself to Jaune, who is the beta male? And...
Cross decided to voice...
This is one of the most bullshit thing, because... he isn't like understand the full implications of his argument, because if if this is true, and if he does consider like Miles inserting himself to Jaune is creepy, and Carrie inserting himself to Neptune is creepy, then Monty inserting himself to Ren should be creepy as well. Because, you know, there's this cute Nora girl who's constantly into Ren, even though Ren is not that charismatic. So, Monty is creepy, guys, because Monty self-inserted himself into Ren. Holy shit, guys. Monty voices Ren, therefore, and Ren is his self-insert. Therefore, Monty is creepy. Oh no.
Like, hey, if you're writing a whole show, you should get to voice one of the characters, that's fine. But come on, it was really weird that you picked Neptune, man. This character
He is going to pick someone, and Neptune, what was he supposed to do? Miles should have picked freaking RWBY. Should Miles voice RWBY? Should Miles voice act Aspen? Is that how it is? Or should Professor Pert, if it's darky geeky voice, should like Miles self-insert into Port, Professor Port? Is that how things should go?
Stuff with a bunch of young female characters who you write, so it just
let's do it. Even for, you know, the voice actors for Team RWBY and all the girls are probably grown-ups too. That's also not mentioned that fact.
Weird. And that is like fine. The problem with the scene is, even if it's perfect, it's yet another thing that's happening instead of a story.
Characters like having a relationship, being like interacting with one another, and having like solving this social relationship isn't like a story, guys. Oh no, the romance slice of life genre doesn't exist, guys. Only fights do matter. Only politics matter. You know, people falling in love and spending fun time with one another, being emotionally supporting one another. Fuck that. Politics, man. Fights, man. That's the only thing that matter. Rules of nature. Rules of nature.
Again. And you know how
rules of nature. And they run when the sun comes up with their lives on the line. Alive! Oh, ho, 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 ho. Out here, only the strong survives.
Suddenly opens up under RWBY's feet, and she falls into the plot.
Okay, that's kind of bad. I
Watching
agree.
This show, knowing that it had a creative lead.
I mean, it's fine. I guess, like, I'm kind of wondering why they didn't just have RWBY, like, I don't know, hear something on the underground and just search whatever that was happening there underground herself without like falling down there. Like RWBY falling actually like makes sense because there is a train track there. So if you like build a tunnel without much of a foundation, there is a possibility that the ceiling will come down. So RWBY, especially when things get old. So RWBY writers still, you know, big brain, still a little bit convenient, but you know, convenience is needed when you are trying to write a story that's fast-paced. And you do realize that Team RWBY was like on mission, and they were roaming like above the freaking train track, above the ground. So naturally, it will make sense that one of them would like fall down
Easier way of
at some point.
The characters.
Yeah, content ID sucks. I honestly do want to make a long video why the copyright law doesn't make sense and it's stupid and it is a crime against humanity, but you know, that has to come later after I make this video complaining, criticizing the criticisms of RWBY.
This is the climactic action sequence of the volume, by the way. Monsters attack the city and 4 other characters turn up and save the day. That's the story.
Yeah, and it's actually like, you know, subverting expectations. Because, you know, it's kind of like boring to see our main characters save the day over and over again. Like, this world is so rich that other characters actually exist. So what? You're mad that other characters actually exist and this world is so big and our characters aren't Mary Sue. You're mad that our characters aren't Mary Sue's and that this world is just too organic for you to appreciate. Is that how it is?
More than that, connect the fights in an organic and meaningful way. RWBY could have just been a collection of fun.
Hey, you know, if Monty wanted that, he could have like told the story writers to scrap it up and like make a better context. I'm not like arguing with this mentality because, you know, I like having a really good context in fights. That's why I think Volume 7 is probably one of my favorites because there's a lot of political intrigue happening. There's also really good reasons to fight.
YouTube.
And like, Volume 1 and 2 is fire. It's fine. And there's still like a lot of like fights that exist solely to be a fight in the later volumes too. But like, it's fine. I think like the problem with this guy's like complaints is that he is like looking at this fight scene and instead of like enjoying this fight scene, enjoying this experience, he is just saying, no, this isn't enough. I want more. I want different stuff. He's like complaining about the prison, the thing that actually exists, and he wants to and desiring this perfect RWBY that doesn't exist. In fact, maybe it does. Maybe the RWBY that exists now is the perfect RWBY because it's real. It's not an imaginary RWBY that exists in your head that came from your selfish desires, that came from your ego. You know? So maybe the problem really isn't about RWBY. The problem is about people's desires. You know, desires to like not appreciating what's real, appreciating what we have.
It's putting time and attention into creating this character. And all of this work goes into the creation of a character who, due to some kind of natural disaster, is on screen for like 30 seconds maximum and does nothing. Just to give you a sense of...
Yeah, that's why RWBY is amazing. It just puts effort into everything. Every little small detail and every little characters. Even if they're going to be like on screen for a few seconds, it doesn't matter. Because, you know, that's what creation and love is, I guess. There is no profit motive in here. Like RWBY isn't... The writers and the creators clearly didn't think that, oh, we are like going to make billions of dollars, so let's just make this extremely marketable and let's just put as much low effort as possible but as much pandering as possible. No, they just they enjoyed the working process. They just did what they liked, and that's RWBY is a love child. That's why I also love it. I can very clearly see they loved making the show.
How miserably mismanaged the writing was. Velvet is speaking for...
Like, even if they wanted to give Velvet more screen time, they probably couldn't, because, you know, the volume was also packed.
About 14 seconds of Volume 2 of RWBY.
I mean, they do have their own, like, spin-off novels.
I just showed...
You should read it, buddy.
All of it.
I mean, I should probably
with the voice actress.
But, you know, I also... Like, you said that Volume 2, like, needed more drafting, but there really wasn't anything to cut out. You could like add a scene onto scene, like make Volume 2 like 4 hours long, 8 hours long. It doesn't matter. You can like keep adding scenes, but there isn't really much you can cut out.
This bit where the Grimm's legs flip out, but imagine how much better the scene would have felt if you knew who these characters were. Or
buddy, you know that's not realistically possible. It's humanly not possible. They don't have any screen time. They don't have any space to put this. And in Volume 3, a bunch of shitty fight happens. In the Velvet and Team Caffeine do get screen time there, so why are you complaining about this? They literally got introduced in Volume 2, and they do get used in Volume 3, and they probably are going to be used in Volume 9. At the time of this recording, Volume 9 is yet to come out.
Rift shows is, even when I remember the really cool fights, I go back and watch entire episodes or arcs of the show again. I don't just go like, oh, remember that fight? That fight's good, let's just watch that out of context. Like, no, the storytelling is part of what accentuates those scenes.
Oh, yeah. JoJo Part 3 has such a great story, right? The go after Dio and punch a bunch of villains, one-off villains. You know, definitely an objectively better story than RWBY, which has politics, romance, slice of life, teen drama, a lot of psychological stuff, and racism. You know, it's definitely, JoJo Part 3 is just much more complex, dude.
Fights in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure feel meaningful.
I mean, I'm not going to shit on Part 4. Part 4 is really fun, but, you know, just saying.
Using your protagonist by having them stop a robbery is a good idea for an opening. In fact, it's a good intro in the movie they got this idea from.
Oh yeah, Cowboy Bebop invented robbery, guys.
That its writers didn't seem to know why it was a good opening. This opening works well.
I mean, was this a good opening? Because if I actually like compared this to Roman, again, unlike him, I'm not trying to be objective. I'm just saying it's a personal bias. I definitely think that in terms of how the show looks, and there are certain scenes that I really like, but in terms of like overall plot structure, this robbery scene doesn't really matter. Whereas in the start of RWBY, Roman is like one of the main villains. RWBY and the Roman are facing off one another. And like establishing that rivalry that RWBY and Roman has is really cool.
In the movie,
whereas this scene is cool, but I don't think this really impacts the story that much. It does give Spike a really good
to tell us about our characters.
But you know, unlike him, I'm not going to bitch. This is a really good,
holding an old
good
woman
scene. Like this, it's
he
flawless. It's Cowboy Bebop.
Sorry, lady.
The directing is fucking amazing.
We don't protect or serve. This is strictly business.
What?
But that doesn't make RWBY bad. They're just both really good.
You'll just have to chalk it up to bad luck.
Which makes
Spike's voice is so cool.
Think, oh, someone else.
So yeah, even if it doesn't like have big plot moments or doesn't happen, it does like characterize Spike really well. Or just at the very least, just makes him look professional.
Good because it's what we call
cautious type.
In the show, we have a lot of time to learn in detail that Spike has embraced a very
to the point that the show is entirely character focused, and a lot of zany shit, which is fine. But I also do like the ongoing plot, how RWBY manages to like flesh out their characters with down to scene moments, but also manages to have a political intrigue. And a lot of interesting shit, ongoing story.
Specific philosophy toward his life.
That doesn't make a Cowboy Bebop disappointing. They're just good. I just like, if I were to like make a list of top anime that you should watch before you die, RWBY is gonna be on top of Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is probably gonna be on that list, but currently, I think I will put RWBY above Cowboy Bebop. Because, you know, unlike him, I don't find things disappointing. I find things fascinating. I find art fascinating. And I'm not going to bitch about them because, you know, how does bitching about something help anyone aside from making people's ego go stronger?
I mean, the movie's literally called Knocking on Heaven's Door. Like, the film's about these ideas. This robbery doesn't
just make a fucking video about Cowboy Bebop.
Really have anything to do with the plot at all.
Like, the freaking the problem with like criticism videos is that they're just not worth it. This is why I don't like make criticism videos, because unless I'm like trying to criticize fucking Putin, it's really not worth it, because artists are good people. You know, these people could be like making World War III. They could be fucking raping and killing a bunch of people. But instead of doing that, they're making art, doing the things they enjoy. And who am I to criticize that? It's so hard to make a art criticism video when it's their freedom of expression and their creation. I don't want to like shit on other people's creation. The things they do love.
It's an unrelated.
And in the fan, there are like many things that I think that are overhyped. Like, I don't know, My Hero Academia. I mean, I guess the recent one is My Hero Academia. But there are also some other shit that people really like, but I don't really appreciate. One of them is probably, I don't freaking know. JoJo Part 3, I did say it. Oh my god. And yeah, and the fact that I'm struggling to like shit on something just shows how much I enjoy a lot of stuff. Squid Game doesn't really like look that interesting, but I'm not going to shit on them. They're fine. If I'm going to shit on them, I'm going to shit on them now and not make a scripted video shitting on something.
Better storytelling because
that's way too much effort into something that's not worth it.
You are learning something and your brain is thinking about it. I want to know more about what Spike's deal is. I want to see what he does next. What does RWBY set up about RWBY in this first scene? Well, she's reading Weapon magazine and actually distracted instead of pretending, which I guess shows us that she likes weapons a lot and she's still a child who doesn't pay much attention.
Yeah! That's good characterization.
Surroundings. We also see she's a really strong fighter. For example, without taking her weapon out, using her bare hands, she beats the shit out of 2 guys bigger than her and sends them flying. Remember this part, I'm gonna do a thing. This isn't really much characterization. Events in stories, even in intensive action sequences, are...
Yeah, and for some reason, Cowboy Bebop just blows the water right in when they do similar things a bit differently.
Compelling largely because of how meaningful they are to the audience, and this is achieved by developing a connection with the characters. The gang in Bebop choose to get involved in this, and choose how specifically.
Oh yeah, now he's trying to justify it. Oh, you know, technically they are reacting to it, and RWBY could have just, I don't know, ran away, but she instead chose to fight. Like if RWBY ran away, nobody would blame him for because she's 15.
Handle everything that
but she decides to fight.
Happens, and Spike even deliberately chooses.
And Roman chose to rob the dust store, so
himself
they both chose. RWBY chose to fight, Roman chose to rob.
In way more danger to try to help someone else. What these decisions are and why they.
Oh no, RWBY didn't endanger herself info. She kind of did.
Make them are interesting. The story of this movie is what we call character driven. In this opening scene, RWBY never actually has to make a choice. She
chose to fight, dumbass.
Just happens to be there. Just happens to be a badass anime warrior who can beat these guys.
She chose to fight them. And then she chose to pursue Roman.
Just happens to be seen doing it by a professor at Anime Hogwarts who refers her to the.
Every single decision is, you know, she chose to do all this
and then just
fancy
happens
moves,
to be
you know?
seen doing it by a professor at Anime Hogwarts who refers her to the headmaster. RWBY gets into this school and is therefore present for the rest of the plot of the show because she happened to be in a store while it was being robbed. This isn't character-driven story writing.
Oh no, dude!
This is coincidence-driven.
Dude, why am I even watching this
also,
fucking
about
video?
This scene where RWBY is like being
it's
interrogated
so
by Glinda and Gandalf Goku. They're like in this dimly lit chamber, like it's a prison or something. But then it turns out that she
yeah, this guy probably has a better scripted video. Like this guy scripted this shit. He did a shit ton of research, and he is using the footage of his video. I'm just reacting to it. I am the lazy one, but just because I'm the lazy one doesn't mean I'm wrong. And just because he's hardworking doesn't mean he's right.
To be invited.
This is also one of the things people have to realize. That sometimes production values doesn't mean shit.
Come to my school.
If what you're doing is shit,
lit like an interrogation.
Doesn't amount to anything.
Where are they? Is this like a safe house that this guy has? Okay, there actually is an explanation for why this scene is like this, and we're gonna get into it. Don't you worry, it's a doozy. So the issue with the dust store robbery is that RWBY doesn't actually choose to do anything. A fight happens at her, and she wins. To be honest, that's basically the entire plot.
She chose to fight. I guess she did chose to be there at the dust store. So she probably was trying to like buy dust or at least find it interesting to be there. So, you know, her hobby, so characterization. She was in a weapon store, so reading a weapon magazine, so she made a lot of choice. But, you know, RWBY is objectively bad because the store she was in got robbed. You know, that's such an unrealistic and impossible, illogical situation. I can't believe it, guys. RWBY is so
show,
trash.
Except sometimes